Welcome listeners to a crucial discussion by NISSMAT on safeguarding our seas from the perils of piracy. As waves carry commerce, culture, and life itself across the vast expanse of our oceans, the threat of piracy persists. Today, we shall deep dive into the strategies, technologies, and international collaborations employed to ensure the protection of maritime trade routes. From the treacherous waters of the Gulf of Aden to the strategic choke points worldwide, we shall explore the evolving landscape of maritime security and the efforts made to secure our oceans against piracy. A point to remember here is that 10% of all sailors in the world are Indians. We have with us Mr. Jasdeep Loni, who is an expert on the maritime security. He's been in marine industry for the last 42 years. He started as an apprentice on a merchant ship in 1981 and got his first command of a ship in 1996. He hanged his sea boots in the year 2000. For the last 23 years, he's led and executed various projects in international marine industry. Since 2011, he is the Global Vice President Technical of Health, Safety and Security and Environment of Tom Denmark. He also heads Storm Group in India. He has worked at various levels in the marine industry and contributed towards improving safety and security at sea. I begin by asking Mr. Loni the first question. What are the current trends in piracy activity worldwide and how have they evolved over the recent years? Over to you, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pawan, and thanks to NISSMAT for taking up this topic. It's very crucial for safety of life at sea. So coming back to what are the current trends? Well, piracy trends vary, but hotspots include the Gulf of Guinea, Southeast Asia, and waters of Somalia. The methods have evolved from a traditional hijacking to more sophisticated approaches today, and that includes kidnap for ransom. Historically, several kidnappings, primarily between 2014 and 2021, were on the coast of Somalia. But what we have seen is, in last 2 to 3 years, presently Somalian waters seems to be calm than what they were before. In Gulf of Guinea, there has been a shift from hijacking tankers, where they used to take the tankers and do the cargo thefts. Now it is kidnapping of crew members. At present, what we see is due to Nigerian elections, oil prices increase, and Nigerian government has implemented Deep Blue project, with which that area is little less on the piracy or little less incidents have happened. And of course, always the seasonal weather impact also plays a role. So normally April to October, we see lesser incidents. If I have to take the current trends in general, we see that piracy incidents have reduced worldwide.
That is so true. In fact, I dug out a couple of some data from the internet. We said that in 2010 there were 445 incidents of piracy on the seas. In 2011 it came down to 439. 2021 it was 132. 2022 dipped further to 115. But in 2023, in the first 9 months, it's gone up 10%.
Yes.
So this is the data that is there at this point of time on the internet. So can we just talk of what is Deep Blue project? Because
Yes.
we don't know actually what is Deep Blue project.
Perfect. So I'll connect a little bit more onto Deep Blue project is. So when there was Somalian piracy was at the peak, and we needed what we required at that time was that navies from that area become active because they play a very active role when it comes to uh, uh, combating the pirates and also uh, getting the situation under control. So in this area, it was the EU forces which started patrolling, monitoring in the Indian Ocean. And a similar model started about 2 years back in Gulf of Guinea, where the EU forces started putting their own navies to patrol the area because there's a lot of activity from the European uh, navies, European commercial navies in that area. So with that, the local governments in Nigeria, they also said, okay, we can do these things together, and they became active. So that is where there has been a funding. They have put some funds aside. There has been an international funding as well. So they said, we will also start doing it on the similar lines what we saw Indian Navy stepping up during the Somalian piracy, a similar thing what we are seeing also in Nigeria.
Now, how, can you highlight the vulnerable areas for piracy and what would be the reasons for their vulnerability?
Yeah, sure. Uh, Vulnerable areas include all the choke points. And when we say choke points, more number of ships, more vulnerable. And, if we look at Gulf of Aden, then it's around that is one side is Yemen, the other side is Somalia, Djibouti. So that is a choke point where maximum shipping is passing, and as well as the countries around it have a political instability. There are socio-economic factors and inadequate law enforcement. If we look at Daw and Malacca Strait, it is it is also narrow channels, but there also we see more of robbery than of piracy. So these are the choke points, what I said, where maximum shipping is moving and areas around it have a political instability.
JP, how would you differentiate between robbery and piracy?
Yeah, huge differences. I mean, robbery is they come, they rob and they run away. The piracy is moving more towards is where they are kidnapping the person, taking it. There are ransoms being asked for. Uh, Robbery, okay, they take the whatever is on board and go away. While in the case of piracy, it's the ship, it's the environment, it's the safety of life at sea. So normally a robber will not harm a individual if he gets what is there. But that may not be the same in case of piracy. As well, the piracy, if we look at some of the hijackings and kidnappings, I mean there were some of the seafarers who were taken off almost for a year. They were kidnapped by the pirates.
What actually motivates a pirate? What would
Well,
drive piracy?
let me start with Somalia part of it. So it is mainly it's the economic gain, it is the political motives, and sometimes insurgency also. If I go back almost 2 decades back, around 2005 or so, that's the time we started seeing rise in Somali piracy. That means in that area there were fishermen who felt that their seas have been robbed by the bigger fishing boats, and they have taken away by the trawlers. They have taken away the fish from that area. There was a lack of functioning central government, and that was driving them towards socio-economic part of it. And then that's the time it started rising. When it started rising, they could see that there was an immediate gain. And with that immediate gain, they've kept investing back in sophisticated weapons, and they had made mother vessels, and then a lot of groups entered into this, and then they were being like a control and command with the bigger groups. Uh, well, today we see that piracy in Somalia is down, but a lot of effort has been put also on the shore side to settle the people there as well, to improve their life on the shores. Uh, that's on, if I see towards Somalia, Gulf of Guinea, Nigeria, that's again a different part. There is again one thing what is common in both the areas is uh, lack of functioning governments in those areas.
Jasdeep, can you talk of, like if there's a ship moving from place A to place B, what are the type of insurances that the ship carries to protect itself against the pirates who may come in
Yes,
and probably take the ship away or the crew away or something like that?
yes,
What are the insurances that you carry
yeah,
on the ship at all times?
yeah. So what started happening was that when the piracy was going really at the peak, and even now also in some areas, then high risk areas were established. That means whenever a vessel entered in those high risk areas, then the insurance premium was high. Then also was that some of the crew had the option of not going into those areas if they said, well, we don't want to trade, or we don't want to be in the ships where there is potential danger to them. So then we also took what is known as KNR. These are kidnapping and ransom insurance, which is a separate one. These KNR insurance was again, which was kept quite secret because these were from here came in if we had to settle or negotiate with the pirates. So all in all, high insurance premiums, making the HRA where the crew, you had to give crew an uh, additional amount for the high risk area they were operating in, as well as KNR insurance also clicked in at that time.
Which part of the world has the highest insurance level? For example, if it's the Gulf of Guinea or the Gulf of Aden or the Indonesian waters.
Yeah, I think the highest so far I've seen is in the Somalian waters. But again, when we talk about insurance, then we also go into a different part with the geopolitical situations right now, which are ongoing. So let's say if the vessel has to operate in Black Sea during the Ukraine-Russia conflict, then the premiums will be even higher. So far we have seen the highest around the Somalian waters.
So, which means that the cost that is to be borne by the customer for moving their goods would become more expensive.
It will. It will. So there will be direct cost and indirect cost, and it will also happen is that if I when we are talking about the cost, then I can move into a little bit different. Is that during the Somalian piracy, it took a long time for some of the countries to put in the security guards on board because, as such, the merchant naval vessels don't have the security guards on board, nor is the crew trained to carry any to operate any weapons. So we don't carry any weapons on board. So you had to employ security guards on board, but that took a lot of time. And the reasons for that was when you are flying a flag of a country, that means there are certain checks, certain vettings to be done before the employment of the security guards on board. So I can say, some countries it took as much as security guards started voting only in 2012. So that was also a cost to the owners and to the eventually going to the customers when they were operating in these areas.
That's so true. And then, how do ships utilize the safe corridors and recommended transit routes to mitigate piracy? What is the methodology that you use to be able to comply with this instruction?
Yes, and it was very interesting part that how quickly these safe corridors and normally, as you asked me earlier, on the choke points. So these choke points where the safe corridors were set up, and it was the intention when it started was that some ships had the security guards and some did not have, because as per regulations of the countries, the flag, what they were flying. So these corridors were where they had the escort vessels from the Navy. And when passing through that, so they will announce that, okay, there are convoys at this time and this time of, so the ships reached those choke points at then they had at that particular time. And then it was also what speed you do, what kind of vessel you are. So all that was put into, and then you said, okay, you will be joining this convoy and you'll be escorted by the patrolling vessels of the navies. And these were patrol monitored. They were reducing the risk of piracy. Gulf of Aden was where the corridor was set up, and actually it was very helpful during those choke points there.
Did you have to pay to the navies for the escort duties, or it was just a safety precaution that countries took for their maritime activities?
No, we didn't have to pay to the navies for that. In fact, it was a collaboration between the various navies, EU navies. We had Indian Navy, all of them, and they were running this in collaboration. Also, it was, if I take another leaf out of the of what was happening, was that it was the energy security. If you had to give the gas shipments and the oil tankers and others which were passing, which was as it is, quite risky and vulnerable to carry these cargoes. So you were giving the energy security to the world by doing this. So it was absolutely very well done by the naval forces in that area.
Uh, when I was researching on this topic, what came up was that Indonesia, Somalia, and Nigeria were the three locations where you had the highest number of piracy attacks.
Yes.
And whereas the Gulf of Aden, which we talk more of, did not figure in the topmost piracy locations.
Yeah. See, the maximum number of, when we talk about, so far Indonesian waters and all that have mainly been robberies. There have been very few hijackings, and why when we talk about Somalia and these areas, it picked up where, as you rightly said, there were times when there were 20, 25 ships under the control of pirates, and it was quite long till everything came under control. Gulf of Guinea has a different altogether. It's a different way of handling or different area altogether. So that's when we talk about the piracy, it's actually things go in your mind is the Gulf of Aden and Somalian area.
Yeah, that is so right.
Yeah, because also is here the in if we look at the Gulf of Guinea, up till very recently, I'm talking about in up to 2-3 years back or 4 years back, it was mainly for the cargo they will take the vessel. They have changed to the kidnapping very recently. And that is not so when it comes to the Somalia. It was always people. So people were taken first. And when we talk more about Somalia, always you are talking about safety of life at sea. So that's why Somalia is, we speak more about it
There
than,
was a very interesting movie that was made, Captain Phillips.
yes.
Was it fictional or was it real?
Yeah. See, there was, if we go back a couple of years back, then, there was a vessel named Merce Alabama. And that was way back in 2009, where the hijacking took place. And it was a US flag vessel, and which drew significant international attention. And the ship captain was held hostage. But eventually, that also brought in, a lot of changes in the international legislation. So that led to where the United Nations Security Council passed several resolutions, including Resolution 1851, which was aimed to address the piracy of the coast of Somalia. And these resolutions authorized the naval forces to enter Somalian territorial waters to combat piracy. And very interesting also is that that is the time when the International Chamber of Shipping issued their first best management practices. Today, from that division one or part one, or the first, we are to number 5. So where it has been revised as per the what is required. Uh, that was also something for seafarers to use or for the shipping industry to use to safeguard. Again, I repeat here is that seafarers were not trained to combat armed pirates. They were not trained to handle weapons. So the only thing what they had in their hand was the best management practice, which was that to first was to delay. First was to how you with the evasive maneuvers and whatever measures you have taken to stop them from boarding. And if they
We
are boarded,
just get across to that, but can you just highlight what are the best management practices and guidelines that were set out for you all to follow?
yeah. So one of the major thing was, we at that time we went into the vessel hardening and security measures. That means you put on the razor wires, you use non-lethal deterrents like you add special turrets and nozzles. Then you add how do you secure your accommodation where the crew is. So you add everything locked in a way that they are not able to make it to the accommodation. And then on the ships were citadels were made, which was the safe rooms. That means where the crew can retreat in case of a pirate attack. And there was an emergency communication and wait for an external help. That means, you will sound an alert which will be transmitted in that area. So whether the Navy picks up or the platforms like UKMTO and all that which were monitoring you, they will pick it up and they say, okay, so vessel is under attack. And with these measures what were put in, there can be a help from outside. So that was what was set up for those were the measures which actually came out of the BMP or the best management practices.
How effective was effective? How effective was hardening of the ships in combating piracy?
It was because if the tougher you made, the better you had the hardening done. That helped you in a way you were. They knew that this particular vessel is there is high awareness. They are vigilant, so that led to them not picking up the target. They always went for an easy target. And some things which was also there is that how much is the draft and if of the vessel, how high it is. So their way of boarding was with high ladders and all that they used to board from the skiffs. So you kept on improving on your security measures from the knowledge which was being shared internationally by various organizations, and you kept. That's how I say, BMP. We are at BMP 5 now, so they were effective, but then also was, the more incident occurred to where it was becoming difficult just by BMP to keep the pirates away, and that's the time a lot of companies approached their governments and got approvals to have the security armed guards on board. With the security armed guards on board, there are very few handful where they have boarded the vessel. Again, I'm talking about is in Somalia. The same thing may not work in Gulf of Guinea because there the pirates have much more sophisticated weapons, and just having 3 or 4 or 5 security guard does not work. So it worked well in Somalia, but it is not the solution there because there also having the security guards itself is not easy because you are being governed by so many different countries and they may not allow you to have the security guards.
One of the things that I did notice was that majority of the maritime security guard companies were emanating out of the United Kingdom. and we did not have any coming out of the Indian subcontinent. What exactly were the reasons for this?
Yeah. See, to start with was it was, I mean, again, where the maritime international companies were coming from. Those companies were set up. So when where is the more number of vessels or the ships coming from? And one of the reasons for moving to UK first was of most of the companies was that the security guards who came on board, their their records, their personal records had to be vetted and they had to be screened. It was much easier to get this screening done by police verifications and everything when we were putting them on board. So it was more onto is that when you have security armed guards on board, they should have a clean record. And there it was quite tough to get those things done out of India and other places. The next was also the visas, boarding of the vessel. So it was quite easier, logistic wise also, to have somebody with the UK passport or boarding the vessels than what was for an Indian.
What are the training uh, training protocols that need to be put into place on the ships?
Yeah. So for the training protocols for security, we do have the security drills. That's one of the most. Then is they are trained into hardening of the vessels, taking the security measure, good lookouts. Of course, also where the security alert is. So this is all part, and then how good they are prepared. There is an audit for that, both internal and external, on these preparations, which comes actually falls under an ISPS code. Now, the history of the ISPS code was not due to the piracy, but it goes back to 9/11 when the ISPS code was came in.
What does ISPS stand for?
Yeah, it is the for the international shipping. It is a security code. What is there?
One of the things that I've been reading is on the use of water cannons on the ships and acoustic devices. Can
Yes.
you just give a brief on how effective these two things have been, the water cannons and the acoustic devices?
Actually, they have been quite effective, and also, initially when it came in, it was just the nozzles, but later on, development of the turrets and also the machines which were put up on the ship's hull, on the ship side of it, so which were running. That's one. Acoustic also is quite interesting. When what are the behaviors what we have seen, because when the pirates are on board, a lot of VDR, which is like a black box, you can say, is recorded uh, how they were behaving, what it was, and that was used. And so for acoustic was also the sounds and everything which actually troubles them. So that was one of the behavior which we have seen, and that has worked on the ships also.
Can you give a little brief for our viewers and listeners? Is what exactly is a citadel and for how many days can you hold yourself out in that? Your food, water, communication. If you can just give a little idea to everyone on this.
Yeah, perfect. Citadel is like a safe box, and so when we had to develop where the crew can go and secure themselves. So what was done was certain areas on the ship were converted into citadels. That means you had doors which had the double shield. You had put in water, food. You had the satellite phones. Cameras now, where you can see what is happening around. You can have a live camera coming in there, and most important was that you had the communication outside. Uh, what we have seen is that some of the crew has been there inside, because as long as they had the communication, they know that there is a help coming in, right? Personally, I've seen 3 to 4 days was easily group was inside, even longer also. So by the time the help came in, here, if I see the behaviors of the pirates also is normally they will not stay on board more than 72 hours. So anything between 36 to 48 hours is, if they have not been able to take a control of the vessel, they will leave. So that's where we have to be this one. So what we do in a situations like this, once you get all the help, they will see, I mean, especially the navies who have come and helped. So they will board the vessel. They will do the full scanning of the vessel and see that everything is clear, and then only they will board.
On ships is multi-country jurisdictional issue.
Yes,
Uh, how did you get down to solving them? Because we had the Indian case of the Italians,
yes.
uh, and it was a huge controversy that erupted, mainly because I think the Indian laws did not permit weapons to be on board the ships, and they were carrying them.
Yeah. So what is done is that, with regards to the each national requirement, you had to work out, okay, what can be done. So there was also where you had to keep them in the lockers, safe lockers, and seal them and kept in the locker. And that locker was in the position of the master. So that is one part of it. There are certain countries which do not allow that part also. So there the their actions are different, and there we have there can be an escort boat, and the security guards and the weapons are kept on the escort boat. So you will not have any weapon security guard on board. You can have without unarmed security guards, and the weapons are in the escort boat, which is down below and which is of that country. So that's how it works.
But wouldn't the escort boat then be vulnerable to pirate attacks?
I think so far what we have seen, and especially now I'm moving a little bit to the Gulf of Guinea. In fact, escort boats have been more, they have a more impact, and they have worked well in that part than the security guards.
Could you share some success stories or notable instances where effective security measures have thwarted piracy attempts?
Yes, there are several stories around what we have seen, where first is good evasive maneuvers, vigilant crew uh, is one, where which is the first one, and that has been the biggest success stories. Then the other is also, where they had armed guards on board, or they went into the citadels, how fast they went into the citadels if they saw the boardings. So there have been quite a few successful uh, maneuvers to keep them at bay, the pirates.
JGP, how does information sharing and collaboration amongst different stakeholders occur? And
Yeah,
how does it enhance your ability to protect yourself?
absolutely. That's a good one. You see, one is that uh, there is a there are different platforms where every time you have a theft or you have a security incident, you report, and that is broadcast to every fleet, every ship across the world. So that means, that's something where every ship is contributing if there has been a piracy, or even if they saw something suspicious. So the ships organizations work together. In addition to that, there are like service providers uh, which are gathering that information, and companies like us, or companies, so many companies, they are tied up with them. They have an agreement with them, and they share the information, dynamic information on what's happening. And of course, at any given time, we are monitoring uh, all the vessels where they are, and if there is any incident which has happened and which is immediately getting broadcasted. Also is like UKMTO, which has been set up in in Dubai area to also help us. So there is a lot of support internationally from different organizations, right from navies to private service providers to private companies who are doing this and keeping the entire maritime community informed.
What role does intelligence gathering and risk assessment play in preempting and responding to piracy threats?
Well, they play a very crucial role. In fact, risk intelligence is one thing which uh, who are on top of it and they say, okay, what is the geopolitical situation here? What do they expect? When was the last case? When was the attempt? So they go beyond the incident. They also uh, go into what are the things happening in that area, and they keep giving you the information. And a lot of times when bigger organizations which have a huge number of ships or a large number of big fleet, they even before fixing up their vessels for trade, they will go to them and ask for a risk assessment if they are sending their any of their assets in vulnerable areas. So before opening up and going to the vulnerable areas, risk assessment is paramount because that's how you get the comfort whether you are taking any risk or is your crew becoming vulnerable or your ship becoming vulnerable in that area. So they are very much play a huge role towards the maritime security.
If you recall, the concept of floating armories had come into being in 2010.
Yeah.
One of the nearest one was off the coast of Sri Lanka, and
Yes.
one was also in the UAE area somewhere.
Yes.
Uh, can you just explain as to what these were and how did they get used and who would own them to sort of be there?
Yes. What was happening was, at up to a certain time, some countries like Sri Lanka allowed to have the all the weapons kept ashore. So were some other countries where the security companies, uh, or which I can call it as private maritime security companies, which were providing armed guards, they were keeping their weapons in these countries. And when the boarding used to happen, they will take out the weapons, take it along to the assets what they were boarding. With time, then it started becoming a bit difficult. Also, COVID set in. Cost-wise, it was cheaper to have an floating armory and put everything there. So armories were also became a space for where the armed guards or security guards could come and stay and then go back because of the COVID. So then right now what we have is again the high risk area is almost gone. So with that we see an armory in Red Sea. So all in all, because of the reduction of piracy, uh, the use of security guard is reduced, and so as the armory is also reduced. So that's what's happening now. In fact, it's going to reduce further. What we can see.
What is the impact of piracy on global trade and the economy
Yeah.
from the ship's perspective?
So the first impact, if I see, was that on the human part of it. When the piracy was, I mean, and our first anyone looks at is the safety of life at sea. So it was also the seafarers, their life at sea was most important thing when I look at it. And one of the biggest impact was that how to keep the crew motivated, their morale up, and also provide them the safety and security in these vulnerable areas. So you do have quite a few times where the seafarers said, "We will not go in that area," and we always respect that. So it is an individual call, and we used to respect. So that was the first thing, the how to keep this trade going, how to have the ships going if the seafarers don't feel secure. And of course, if I look beyond that, because they were all of us was reading the stories of ransom and kidnapping and psychological trauma, so all that was indirect impact. And if so, that was it was a humanitarian crisis in during that time, and it continued for a couple of years. The seafarers who were kidnapped or hijacked during that time, they required a lot of help to come back to leading a normal life because of what they had gone through. And of course, then disruption of the major shipping routes. So there were no more on the same shipping routes. We had to deviate the vessel, see which is the safest route for people, cargo, and the vessel. So that means your voyages became longer. So the operational cost increased. So all this kept on going up and led to actually that how will we operate? And every time a vessel was hijacked, the piracy became richer and they could deploy and employ more sophisticated weapons and way of doing the things, right? So that was, so if I start people, then I came on to how it.
One thing, I have another question here.
Sure.
You see, majority of your sailors and all are on contract basis.
Yes, yes.
And there have been instances where the sailors have been kidnapped. Their contract would probably expire, and the company says that we got nothing to do with them now. Who looks after them?
No, I think there may be some of the companies which are not operating under the RPSL requirements. RPSL is very much the requirements. It is a license to have to for the seafarers to be on board. So all RPSL companies will take care of their seafarers. Now it's some, yes, from India they are on contract, but if we go outside India, then they are full time also. So the stories what we hear are from some of the substandard operators and not from the standard operation. And
Nevertheless, you see, whether it's standard or otherwise, it is the sailor who's suffering at the end of the day.
yeah, so in this particular one, as long as they are on board, they have been taken care for the salaries part of it. There are forums like the seamen unions are there. There are operators which are a part of FASMA, MASA, and other ones. So there is a very good understanding. It is a seafarer who's getting the ship going. So we have to respect that. And that is where it comes to, is that I have not heard many incidents of that. I have heard very few where it was that seafarer was not only the seafarers, even the families were given full support, and that's what I strongly believe in.
You have so much of experience in handling ships. Uh, what are the measures that all the ship companies together are taking to reduce the impact of piracy or to eliminate piracy?
Yeah. So what is being going on is that when we had in the Indian Ocean, when it was full piracy or at the peak was there, that's the time what we did was these companies approached the various authorities, navies, and so it was main thing was out there that how you can get local regional support to combat it. And the same things have been done in Gulf of Guinea, where several governments, along with the governments, the companies have gone approached the local regional governments to support in that. And that's where it comes in. When you have a local support, when you have a regional support, then it becomes easy to deal with this. And that's what's going on at all the time. The areas keep changing, as I said, but we have to be on top of it, that we get the regional support on this.
To conclude the session, what is your recommendation to the maritime community? as to what they should do. If you were to suggest 2 points that they should do, what would they be?
Yeah, I think the most important thing here is that we should not forget that the safety of life at sea is most important. And to have the ships which can at least detect what's going on. So technology wise, you should have the vessels which can delay the piracy boarding, because I can for sure I can say is that there'll be always up and down when it comes to the regional areas, and because of the geopolitical situations keep changing. Uh, Identify the vulnerable points, help involve your governments to look at it, and especially the maritime nations. Big maritime nations play a huge role in this. And that's where it comes to, is that huge maritime nations working along with the local governments and lifting up the socio-economic part of those coastal states, which are at the choke points and all that. So one is enhance your security measures on board, bring in the technology, but on the same time start or keep working on what work has been started with the socio-economic part of the coastal states of the area which are vulnerable.
JCP, I'd like to thank you. And as I conclude the session today, I'd like to request all our viewers that if you like the program, please sort of like and share and subscribe to NISSMAT. All the videos that we keep doing would come to you immediately if you've done this. And the battle against piracy is ongoing, requiring not only advanced technologies but also international cooperation and a commitment to the safety of seafarers and global trade. We extend our gratitude to you, Jasdeepji, for being with us today and sharing your insights. We'd also like to remember that the seas connect us all, and it is our duty to ensure they remain pathways of prosperity, untainted by the shadows of piracy. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and join us again as we continue to explore critical topics impacting our world. Jasdeepji, thank you very much for being on our show today.
Thank you to NISSMAT. Thank you, Mr. Pawan. And I thanks for always taking up the hot topics. Thank you.